afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The defendant, Rakim Mayers, now has, and he's afforded an opportunity to argue the case, if you will. I'm not going to argue to you, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm going to do is try and discuss reasonable inferences that we believe can be drawn from the evidence. What I'm going to do is something a little different. I'm going to cede the floor to the transcripts in this case, the testimony. So it's not in dispute, what I'm going to say. Ultimately, what will determine the facts and what's going to be important is you. And we can all live with that. You're empowered to do justice here. This is the great system of ours that works. And I'd like to, first and foremost, I'd like to commend and compliment Mr. Preslomit on what I thought was a fine argument this morning. I don't agree with much of anything he had to say, but I did listen intently, and I hope you'll do the same with me. There's a few things on what he said, though, I do have to just address immediately. And during his argument, because I didn't object doesn't mean I agreed. I didn't object once. I thought there were some misstatements of facts. I'll deal with that. But I'm not afraid of anything that was said or anything he had to say. I didn't want to interrupt him. I didn't want to object. I wanted you to hear where the arguments are. Let's see if they give me that same courtesy. He did, during his 2+ hours first summation, because they get 2 summations, you'll hear about that later. He didn't once mention the fact that their only witness in this case committed perjury again and again and again and again in this court. That wasn't mentioned once, not even dealt with. That's an important issue in this case, as you're going to see, because the case does rise and fall on his credibility, without question, without question. Detective Flores, their case detective, testified, and we'll put up this testimony in a bit, that without Relli, the 2 videos and the sounds, there's no evidence of a shooting. Could be, could not be. That's certainly not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So Relli's testimony is in fact everything. And Mr. Preslomit seemed very worried about what I'm going to say about Mr. Efron and his credibility. He understands that that case rises and falls with him. And he spent a lot of time anticipating what I'm going to say about it. One thing he said I would do, but I promise you I won't, is I'm not going to go through every inconsistency of Mr. Efron. We'd be here until Christmas. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go through the major lies he told, the admissions of perjury, the important facts that he told you that turned out to be lies. I'm not going to worry about some inconsistency he told about some statement he made 2 years ago or 3 years ago. We would be here literally for days on end, and I'm not going to do that. Mr. Preslomit said there's no evidence of a profit in this case. Again, we'll get to all this. There's definitely a lot less evidence of a real gun in this case than a profit. The facts scream out that it's impossible for what he had that night to be a real gun. The DA spent much of that argument, 2 hours and 15 minutes or so, repeating himself, repeating the same arguments again and again, sometimes in sarcastic tone, because the evidence isn't there. Look, together, hopefully, these discussions that we're going to have are going to be helpful in trying to arrive at a decision in this case, where you don't compromise, where you don't do violence to your conscience, where you do the right thing. And you're the ones who are empowered to determine what, in fact, is the right thing. It's you. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever in your life been falsely accused of it? Ever been falsely accused of it? Have you ever had to sit there and take watch proceedings or watch how it played out and wait and wait and wait, knowing that you're innocent, knowing that you didn't do it? All you can do during such a process is maintain your dignity. Isn't that right? All you can do is maintain your dignity. Knowing that you're innocent, but maintaining your dignity and remembering always that you're left in a crisis is your conduct during it. That's another reason why I am so proud to represent Rocky. He's a man who's maintained his innocence from day one, 3.5+ years ago, who's conducted himself with dignity throughout these proceedings from day one. I started off telling you about this case was all about my first line out of the bat in the opening statement, seems like 1.5 years ago, was that this case was about Relli's jealousy, lies, and greed. I said that you'd see the kind of person he was in this courtroom, an angry, pathological liar. That he, and he alone, is the source of all the evidence that they are relying on. And this case would rise and fall on his credibility. You take him out of the picture, there is no case. And as I promised, Relli showed you who he truly was when it came time for cross-examination. He's a man who told you without hesitation, I can tell people whatever I want. He said that actually to you. I was right out of the box, the first one that fine, please.
You want the audio-visual please? Alex, come on.
I'm good. I don't want
That's fine.
Yeah.
We have an audio-visual person in the court. We'll have him come up to see the product. Go ahead.
to.
Sure. It works on the computer.
Okay. What you would have heard, what you may see one day, after Mark comes up to save us once again, is him literally saying to you, I can tell people whatever I want. He's their witness, who you're being asked to believe beyond a reasonable doubt. I can tell people whatever I want. He's a man who literally gave 4 different answers to one question. 4 answers, one question. He said, yes, no, I don't recall, I don't know, in one question. That was the first for me. I've been doing this for a bit. That was the first for me. 4 answers, one question. Yes, no, I don't recall, I don't know. He's a man who committed perjury before your eyes over and over again. A man who snapped, cursed, threw a water bottle while he was testifying, cursed in this courtroom. Threw a water bottle out of anger while testifying in the light of court with the judge, with the jury, with these terrific sheriff's deputies and bailiffs. That's how you had to hear. Imagine what he's capable in the dark of night. He doesn't think anyone's watching. The evidence in this case has shown you that this case indeed rises on his credibility or falls on his credibility, and it has fallen hard. Before we start, I do want to thank you all. It's right to thank you all for your commitment and sacrifice in this case. It's not been an easy case. It's been a long, long case. It's been odd that not one of you have ever been late. Another first for me. Been doing this for a while, both as a prosecutor and defense attorney. Not once have we been waiting for a juror. So your commitment and your sacrifice is extraordinary, especially in a 4-week trial. So we both sides thank you for that. I know that. But this is what this is about. This is why we love what we do. That's why I love what I do. It's an opportunity to come before people who are from the community, who are the conscience of the community, because you are the conscience of this community. And when I say community, I mean you represent the community of Los Angeles. Every part of the community, parts that are represented here, and parts that aren't represented here, Compton, Englewood. You represent all parts of this community. You set the standards, you tell us what's right and what's wrong with your work. Use your common sense to do that. And ladies and gentlemen, your verdict goes far beyond these courtroom doors. The evidence isn't there in this case. It's not even close. Again, appreciate Mr. Prezoma's argument, but we're gonna dissect the evidence now. Apart from Relli's testimony, the prosecution, just his testimony, I'm not talking about his physical evidence, apart from his testimony, the prosecution's evidence consists of videos, shell casings, and knuckle scrapes. And I don't know what else to call them but knuckle scrapes. I know they said, oh, he's gonna call them knuckle scrapes. What am I going to call them? Bullet wounds? I mean, they're knuckle scrapes. Videos don't prove that case, they prove the opposite. Relli was the aggressor in both videos, and we'll show you those, and we'll show you them slowly. The shell casing is not, sir.
Mark says it's set up right, but he needs to.
Yeah, I'll stop for a second. You want to try it? Let's try it. Thanks.
Go ahead. You need back here or over there? Yeah, right.
I'm telling people what
Thank you, Mark. You want to hang around for a little bit, or?
I know, right?
Stick around. Okay.
Don't go far.
Thank you very much. Well, anyway, he was one of the videos. Might have to play that, Steve. Go ahead.
yes, no, I don't know. They want to do it. I don't know. It's been so long. I tell people what about it. I don't get it, but no. Yes, no, I don't know. They want to do it. I don't know. It's been so long. I tell people what about it.
Okay. I think we already discussed it. I don't have to go back to it, but that was. You could take that down, please. Anyway, the shell casings and the knuckle scrapes mean absolutely nothing without believing Relli's story about them. They mean nothing without believing his story in whole about them. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how the evidence or lack of evidence shaped up in this case. Before we do, I want to make clear what Rocky is charged with. He's charged with 2 counts of assault with a semi-automatic weapon. One for the altercation by the parking garage on Argyle Avenue. The other for the altercation Piece Del Mar, that fuzzy video that you see. The DA said you only have to decide if it's proper or not. That's it. That's all you have to decide. Very simple. Nothing else is in dispute. That is not true. That's not true. And the judge just told you this just the other day. He said, as a matter of fact, that's not what you just have to decide. It completely ignores the self-defense and defense of others law that the judge instructed you on. But they see what they want to see. They say what they want to say. They hide from you what they don't want you to see, which is why they cut off the end of the video on Piece Del Mar. And we're going to show you what they cut off. They cut off after Rocky's gone. After 12 is already running away, they cut off the part where Relli goes back and gets Ills one more time. The guy who's only using for a human shield. They cut that part of the video off. We did. We'll show you. The judge will instruct you, each of those charges requires the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, another term I didn't hear much, 2 hours plus summation of this result. Beyond a reasonable doubt that Rocky possessed a real operable semi-automatic firearm and that Rocky did not act in self-defense or defense of another. Beyond a reasonable doubt. And the evidence just isn't there. It's not even close in this case, guys. It's not even close. I'm here to gain respect for the undeniable fact that even now as we sit here, Rakim Mayers is presumed innocent. He's presumed innocent as we sit here now. I'm here to point out the numerous reasonable doubts that lurk in the evidence in this case. Because folks, please remember, the judge didn't tell you, he did already have some charges. All you need is one. All you need is one. I submit to you, there are hundreds of reasonable doubts. Hundreds. You just need one. And the case is over. We have this idea of a reasonable doubt. It's not what we do in our daily lives on the street when we talk to our friends or analyzing whether our kids have been truthful or friends have been truthful. But it's something that's really important in this setting, in the courtroom, because it seems as a country that it has served us very, very well. People who founded this country were no strangers to controversy, and certainly no strangers to social danger, have created some of it themselves even. They knew that the surest and best way to guarantee the liberty of citizens was to make sure that if the government brought charges against one of its citizens, they had to prove. And if there was a doubt based on reason, there was a reasonable doubt, there had to be an acquittal. Had to be. What a reasonable doubt isn't, the judge said this to you in the beginning, like, again, 4 weeks ago, whenever that was. What a reasonable doubt isn't, it isn't he may have committed the crime. It isn't he probably committed the crime. It is I'm almost certain he committed the crime. That doesn't carry it. I have no reason to doubt he committed the crime. What was proven beyond a reasonable doubt in this case? Terrell Efron is a compulsive liar and perjurer. That was proven beyond a reasonable doubt. He lies without remorse. Folks, he even bragged to you about committing perjury. He literally did. And you're going to see it. As long as Mark is close by, we're going to see him literally bragging about committing perjury to you. You know, this reasonable doubt, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, you're going to hear me talk about it again. But the prosecution told you just now, Mr. Rosalmo said, that the defense story is impossible. They have to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. You can't just say it. They have to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. They have not met their burden here, not even close, because they can't. It's a very heavy burden, and they've not come close. That's why they resort to making excuses, playing games, relying on possibilities, which is really funny, because you were all here for jury selection, because you wouldn't be here if you weren't here for jury selection. See how smart I am? You were all here when Mr. Lewin in jury selection said, we'll never ask you to look at what's possible in this case. Remember that was like the closing remark in jury selection? We'll never ask you to look at what's possible. He said that. Yet, as we walk through the evidence together, you'll see all the possibilities they presented. Starting with that first witness out of the gate. Right at the jury selection, boom! First witness, Zizzo, right out of the gate. Is it possible you missed the shell casings? You have to say, you never say anything about the word possible. You won't be asked what's possible in this case. First witness out of the box, Officer Zizzo, was asked, is it possible you missed the shell casings? Possible is not proof beyond reasonable doubt, nor are excuses. Why were there no fingerprints on those shell casings that Relli claimed to have found that night? Remember what the floor said about that? Excuses. Well, you know, if it rained, if there was water, if there were cars, if there was wind. We'll go past that. We'll review the evidence together, and you'll see that their excuses for not having proof really start stacking up. And in face of only possibilities and excuses, they resorted to playing games in an effort to win at all costs. And it's not about justice. It's about winning. Plain and simple. And they played games in this case that should offend you. I'm not just saying it, I'm going to take you through. Not showing you evidence embracing perjury of this Relli, trying to deceive you. Remember something I said to you in the opening? I said we're here to make promises both sides, but not like politicians' promises. You know, the thing where we promise you the moon, you vote based on our promises, and you see if we fulfill them. Here, we make promises in that opening statement. You get to see if we fulfill them, then you vote. Let's see what they promised compared to what we promised. They told you Rocky was the aggressor. His text messages show he was the aggressor. You got deleted text messages, we'll get to that. They told you that Rocky shot Relli with a real gun. We told you that Relli was manufacturing the story, deleting and destroying evidence. He was trying to extort Rocky, which came through. That Relli was the real aggressor. Rocky used the prop gun to defend himself. There are two hurdles that they have to overcome to get a conviction in this case. Two hurdles. They cannot overcome them. One is that an object in Rocky's hand on November 6, 2021 was not a prop gun beyond the reasonable doubt. Second is that Rocky did not act in self-defense for 12 year ills. Judge instructed you if the prosecution failed to prove the object in Rocky's hand was not a prop gun beyond the reasonable doubt, the case is over. It's over. Beyond the reasonable doubt. You can stop there. It's over. Judge also told you that regardless of what Rocky had in his hand, if you find that he acted in self-defense or in defense of 12 year ills, he's also not guilty. That's the law. It's not our argument. They bear the heavy, heavy burden of disproving self-defense or defense of another beyond the reasonable doubt. And that's a burden that they cannot carry in this case, not even close. Relli threatened Rocky, Relli threatened Schwelby, Relli repeatedly punched Dills and ragdolled Dills. And we're going to show you that again on the video. Slowly. You had it narrated to you, but you can see it on the video. Before we do that and talk about it, let's discuss why they can't overcome that first hurdle. First, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the object in Rocky's hand was real, was not what we're firing on, because they cannot, absolutely cannot overcome that. There is incontrovertible evidence and testimony in this case, and other evidence that shows you the object that Rocky was possessing was a prop gun. Unimpeached, not a real firearm. And they asked why. First of all, remember, there's no evidence in the record that Rocky was licensed to carry in 2021. He wasn't. But Schwelby and Lou told you it wasn't a real gun. Two people came in here, took an oath, and told you it was not a real gun. Lou Levin told you where it came from, that B&B music video he identified with Rocky and Rihanna from July of 2021, right before. He told you he put a clip drawer on it, essentially a belt clip, to put the piece onto a belt to make it easy to carry. And he extended the magazine with a clear magazine to make it look more intimidating, because the Glock he had prop gun Glock with 26 sword fits in a pocket. It's really small. So this was meant as a deterrent. Mr. Sloman told you that Lou Levin couldn't name the security guy who advised Rocky to carry a prop gun. He was never asked. And he didn't say security guy. He said Rocky's security team. Testimony you could, by the way, you can always have the testimony read back to you at any point. If there's any dispute, I know you guys can do crazy things, but if there's any dispute, you can always say, can we have that part read back of the testimony where Mr. Levin talked about the security people who advised on it, or whatever, hypothetically. So he never was asked. He didn't say a security guy. He said security team, and he just said he concurred. He wasn't pretending to be a security advisor that they mocked him. They didn't ask him that, yet they just tried to argue that to you. Mr. Levin also told you that the prop gun didn't serve its intended purpose on November 6th, obviously, 2021. And Rocky gave it back to him, and he gave it back to this co-director from the DMV video when he went to New York next. He didn't remember if it was December, January, or whatever. By the way, We didn't bring in a picture of the video? Everyone took the burden of proof here, folks. They have the burden. The DMV videos were all to see out there. They could have, if they wanted to, subpoenaed it, they could have burned it in, took it on YouTube. They didn't do that. They didn't want you to see that video. Lou Levin told you he asked the co-director, this guy Haji, where the prop gun went. He did call him back after 5 months later when Rocky was eventually charged and then sued. And Haji, this prop gun guy, the director, co-director, said he didn't know that. He explained he had a studio, big studio in common with other directors of these videos and films and whatnot. And he said it was common space that had cameras, lighting equipment, prop equipment, and everything else that was borrowed and exchanged and whatnot between a bunch of people. That's uncontroverted testimony. And it was gone. The guy Haji couldn't find it. Don't think Lou didn't try. He did. The guy Haji said it was gone. And you heard the DA spoke. They told you. They told Lou. They spoke to Haji. They recorded it. They told you. And you know, if Haji said anything inconsistent with what Lou said, you're going to hear that thing.
Your Honor, we found out about it that day. It's improper.
There are no speaking objections. There are no speaking objections. I've told you that. You will have an opportunity in your rebuttal argument.
Objection, improper argument.
Overruled.
Because if he says it loud, people, it's going to get sustained.
Objection, improper
Sustained.
argument.
That is sustained. Don't do that, Mr. Tank.
Anyway, you would have heard. You know, they knew about Lou Levin prosecution before this trial started. They knew before this trial started, he said that the prop gun came from a music video that could have looked like, and they could have looked prop houses, the music video, whatever else. They could have done it too. But they didn't say, oh, we didn't do it. Again, he had absolutely no burden to do anything. We did provide live witness testimony to cross-examine. It wasn't a surprise to them. They didn't want to be, which they knew what they were going to find. That's why you didn't hear anything.
That's improper argument. Overruled.
Relli's words and actions on November 6, 2021 show you it wasn't the real gun. His words and actions show you. All the prosecution's objective evidence in this case, everything that doesn't come from Relli shows you this was not a real gun. Common sense also shows you it was not a real gun. On that last point, the prosecution would have you believe that Rocky, you saw that video, shot a real gun and his friend Ills was right there. I mean, Ills was right there. According to them, he shot the gun, a real gun, at his friend Ills. That makes no sense. You saw the video. The second shot, Ills was right there. There's no way, even if that was a real gun, that Ills wasn't going to hit. That was real. There was no way. DA then said, well, you know, why? Why would he get rid of the prop gun? He said, we haven't explained that. I think we did. I think Lou Levin explained that pretty well, pretty clearly. Remember, they didn't know 5 months later the police would come. They weren't thinking, ooh, we better save this in case, I don't know, next year at some point I get arrested. That was the furthest thing from Rocky's mind. They did know that it did not serve its intended purpose. They did know that. So that was the end of that. Rocky got rid of that prop gun that didn't work and instead beefed up his security. So now he had to have security all the time instead of just going to events, even when it was his friends on the street. Of course, he didn't know the police were going to be involved 5 months later. As for 12 and Lou Levin, you heard from each of them. And before we get into what they said, let's talk about the process. What's supposed to be about the search for the truth. That's what it's meant to be. It's not supposed to be about just trying to win. That's what it's not supposed to be about. especially when you have the power of law enforcement behind you. You know, it's the prosecutor's job to make sure that innocent people go free also. And it makes sense that all the witnesses come to your attention. All the witnesses come to your attention, as we had to do in this case. You can see that responsible citizens came in here as witnesses, were often treated roughly and ridiculed, attacked by Mr. Lewin, an obsession to win, attacked. You don't treat witnesses who came in here, don't get paid to tell the truth, have no financial motive, you don't treat them like that. Just purely and simply because they're not saying what you want them to say in your version of what the truth might be. You don't do that. Mark Twain, great author, once said, "To a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail." That came to life. The prosecution embraced Relli in this case, though. Embraced it. He didn't even once mention to you all, okay, he perjured himself before you guys many times. Called things fake, that weren't fake. He lied to your faces. That wasn't even mentioned this morning. They defend him despite his despicable acts and his despicable conduct. And with our witnesses, Mr. Lewin carried it to them like they were serial killers. And I mean Twelby and Lou. They were the polar opposites of Relli in every way. How they conducted themselves, how they answered questions. They weren't argumentative. They weren't disrespectful. They were compliant and they were responsive to both sides. To both sides. Compare those human beings to what you saw the week before that. They weren't belligerent. They didn't throw water bottles. They didn't curse. I mean, Relli, who couldn't answer any question straight, admitted to lying. And when he didn't admit to lying, got impeached with prior inconsistent statements. I'm not going to go through them all. You know, when you know the truth and when you tell the truth, you don't have to rehearse the truth. You don't have to get your memory refreshed. You don't have to be reminded of the truth when you know the truth and tell the truth. You don't have to be coached on the truth by the prosecutors. You don't have to have someone telling you how to answer questions like Relli was told in this case. You always get the truth right when you tell the truth. All witnesses answered every question without incident, without problem. They were consistent. They didn't get tripped up once. There was not one inconsistency. So the response to that is, oh, they were coached very well. I dare you damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, I guess. Because if they had been caught up and tripped up and been inconsistent, and their truth was inconsistent, well then they're liars. Or they weren't consistent. But because they were so consistent and they didn't get impeached, they couldn't lay low on them. Oh, they must have been coached. They were not coached, they were consistent because they were telling the truth. You saw that demeanor. They both told you, Luke and Twelby, both told you you previously carried a firearm for that 6-month period. Making being the victim of acts of violence. And Rocky had it on November 6, 2021. And now Rocky's friends knew he had friends. They didn't announce it to the world. Of course, that would be stupid to say, you know, put a social media post out, carry a prop gun. In case you want to attack me, it's really only prop gun. No, Lou said, and Twelby said, it was an immediate group of friends. The prosecution peppered Twelby with questions, not a summary of what he told us, the lawyers. As if that summary contained his prior sworn testimony or prior recorded statements, but it didn't. That's why the judge said it was irrelevant to what Twelby saw in that document.
That's an improper argument.
Repeat that. That's why the judge said it's irrelevant what Twelby saw in that summary document. Irrelevant.
That is an improper argument.
Instead, the summary was simply something that lawyers have to provide as procedural discovery in this case. Look, when I hear this, they're gonna try and pretend like we just came up with this prop in defense. Rocky has been saying that since day one. Here's the testimony of Detective Flores on this issue. Detective Flores was asked, was this something, when he was asked, because he was asked on direct about when did he first find out about the prop in defense? And he said, there were no deposition in criminal cases with the question before. Then I said, all right. So basically, what you were being asked when we're talking about that, you just found out about this prop claim. What you're being asked are questions related to discovery disclosure in a criminal case, correct? And he said, yes. So Detective Flores, who's very honest, and I think tried to do a good job here, told you what that was about. See, if you just listen to the direct in this case, it would make it sound like only 2 weeks ago, oh, there was a prop claim. That's been since day one for Rocky. Discovery in a criminal case is what he was being asked about. I mean, you also heard that it was revealed before jury selection, the day, I think, before jury selection, no, sorry, the day before opening statements, that we got a ballistics report from them that was done over a year before. The day before opening statement, that you guys were empowered. Okay. Whatever. He goes crying and screaming. A year after they did it, Detective Flores said, we got it after you guys were empowered in 2025. Detective Zizzo, Sergeant Zizzo, now former police officer Zizzo, said on the witness stand, we may have missed it. We didn't search the whole street. I said, really? Looking at the report like, when did you say that for the first time? He said, today, this morning, we told him that for the first time. Okay. I say, oh, they just came up with it. This is real life. This is a trial. This is what happens. Sometimes witnesses remember things later, sometimes they don't. But I'm not accusing anyone of perjuring themselves like police officer Zizzo, because he just remembered that today, 5 years later. You know? I mean, sort of odd. 5 years after that, he remembers they may have missed it. That's okay. Look, more importantly, as Toby told you, what he testified to here in this courtroom is what he told us previously and what he saw that night. Period. He was consistent, he was credible, unlike Relli, who actually contradicted his own recorded statements, and unlike Relli, who actually contradicted his prior sworn testimony over and over again. He committed perjury, he bragged about committed perjury. And the fact that the prosecution tried to make you believe that his summary was Trumpi's actual statement when it wasn't. It's a game. It's another example of a game. Here's another one. The prosecution asked Toby, how he knew it was a prop gun if he never spoke to Rocky about it. That was completely misstating what Toby said on direct testimony. Completely. Toby didn't say he never spoke to Rocky about it. He said the opposite. He said they did speak about it prior to November 6, 2021, in September of 2021 in Harlem at that governor's ball thing. And after he first saw it at the DMV video, he said they spoke about it. But he was ripped apart. You never spoke to Rocky about that, you said. He didn't say that. What other games they play with 12B? You heard this one. You heard Detective Flores tell you that before 2 weeks ago, neither he nor any member of law enforcement ever tried to reach out to 12. 2025. This has been happening in 2021. Before 2 weeks ago, before January of 2025, neither he, the lead detective in this case, or any member of law enforcement tried to reach out to 12. They knew who he was, obviously. But that still didn't prevent Mr. Lewin from asking 12 a if before those last 2 weeks, didn't you get a message from us? Didn't you get a message from us? No, Mr. Lewin, you didn't get a message from me. Detective Flores already cleared that up pretty clearly. He didn't get a message from you. They knew he didn't contact 12. They knew he didn't try to contact 12 before 2 weeks ago. But he asked him that question. Why give a false impression that somehow 12 ignored a message? That somehow 12 ignored a
Just a
message?
minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Disparaging counsel.
Yeah, there cannot be any disparaging, personal attacks.
So it's not personal attack. It's a question that was asked.
There are-
Okay,
Do not debate with me
Sorry.
about a ruling. The
Yep.
objection sustained. Go ahead.
okay. Well, you heard the testimony. You saw what happened. You figure out what it was all about. But 12 was asked, didn't you get a message from us in the past? When Detective Flores said, no, no one left him a message. No one tried to reach him. So I don't want to disparage anyone, but you just got to ask yourself, why was that question asked? If it didn't happen. Look, you know, when I say the games, they're a constant theme in this trial. Here's another one. Prosecution asked 12B about photos taken in Rocky's bedroom, which showed Rocky's registered firearms and not a prop gun there. Those photos were taken during a search of Rocky's residence in April of 2022. 5 months after the incident on Vista Del Mar in November of 2021. 5 months later. So the fact that there was no prop gun there means absolutely nothing. You heard there had to be a prop gun way before that. And here's this also, think about this. And why was there no prop gun in the house? You heard why Rocky, for that 5-6 month period, carried a prop gun on advice of security. Because he'd been subject to episodes of violence. He had a stalker, his face was slashed. Home invasion, okay? But he'd been subject to violence. On the street, he didn't have a carry. Okay? So when he wasn't with security, he had this thing to hopefully deter people. At home, he had licensed firearms. Now, because a prop is meant to deter would-be attackers, if they're already in his home, less in his bedroom, there aren't would-be attackers anymore. They're in fact attackers. And a prop gun would be useless there, obviously. Also with the registered guns found in Rocky's house, I guess that the Flores, if they were legally registered to Rocky, and they objected. They objected to that question.
And that's an improper argument.
Sustained.
Well, those in fact were registered to Rocky, legal. Others were registered to Lou, legal. Everything in that house was legal and given back to Lou Levin, who was there at the time of the search. They mocked Lou like he must have made that up. Not just Lou's magazine, the guns were legal too, and they were, 2 of them were, one of them was Lou's, and 2 was Rocky's. Legal and registered. Detective Flores made it clear that the weapons found in Rocky's home were legal. So there should have been no dispute over that at all. Search for the truth is what this should be about. I'm trying to win at all costs. It's not a game. It's not a game. Certainly, a game. It's family. It's not a game. In fact, the prosecution did absolutely nothing, John, to impeach the testimony of Relli. Nothing. Yeah, he got loud and yelled at them a little. But saying liar, liar, pants on fire is not impeachment. He didn't move them off their story once. They were consistent. They stayed exactly consistent with their story the entire time because the truth is easy to remember. The truth is easy to tell. They were not impeached, not once. The fact of the matter is, by the way, it wasn't lack of trying. I mean, we yelled at, they were rated, I mean, at one point, 12 spoke a dialect from his upbringing, from the street where he's from. And he said this thing, and I personally, I think he's one of the nicest guys I've ever seen. He said this thing where he's like, "You feel me? You feel me?" That was just a matter of speaking. But Mr. Lewin had to take that. Say, "No, I don't feel you. I don't really mean I feel you. I can't feel you."
Improper argument.
Overall.
There's no need to mock a witness who came in here and was compliant and respectful. No, they were grilled both 12 and they were grilled about many, many things, including the financial motives of being here. And again, they don't contradict their testimony. I mean, Mr. Preslomic this morning spent a lot of time in their testimony, not about their misstatements or their inconsistencies or contradictions or their impeachments, but just repeated their testimony, but in a sarcastic voice. As if that makes it not true. That's not proof. That's definitely not proof beyond reasonable doubt. So anyway, the financial motive that they were both crushed on in their cross-examinations, 12 and Lou. 12 said zero. He went zero from him. For Rocky, nothing. He's got his own career, actually, pretty well. Lou said he makes a portion of his salary from Rocky. And he does, and he loves Rocky. They both love Rocky. So no one's trying to pretend they're here as unbiased with us. They love him. But it's an interesting thing, though. They were so concerned about his both of their financial motives. Not once did the prosecution take issue with the fact that their own witness, Relli, was here because of his financial motivation, and only his financial motivation. A $30 million financial motivation. But they're asking Lou Levin, don't you get 20% of your salary from him? Or that poor IT guy who had to fly from Paris. You made $20,000 last year from him, huh? I mean, that guy's looking $30 million for that. Nothing scrapes. By the way, if Relli got his $30 million that he wanted, that he said repeatedly, they'd have no witness in this case, as you now know, because he'd be on island somewhere relaxing while they were searching for him. Instead, Relli wants to use law enforcement as a money collector, because he didn't care about the police. You heard him say that many times. And if he got his money, these guys go pound sand. They'll never find him. He's going to be on an island. And he told you how that process works. I didn't hear that. But talk about extraordinary bias that they just want you to ignore. They don't even mention that. It can't be, and it shouldn't be. But it's why we're here in this courtroom. It's why we're all here. What else should be ignored? Despite all the prosecution's efforts, despite the blistering questions posed to them, both Twelve and Lou Levin established these incontrovertible facts. They're not controverted, they're not contested. That Rocky was known to carry a property by his friends. They didn't controvert that at all. The object in his hands on November 6, 2021 was a problem. Relli's own actions on November 6, 2021 confirmed that. 12 testified during the first altercation. Relli said something to the effect of, shoot that big ass gun, which explains his later conduct, by the way. Now, Relli said he didn't say that. So, now you have to see who's more credible, more trustworthy, Relli or Relli. That's what you have, the words of the two of you in that regard, in that one thing. And consistent with his knowledge that it was a fake gun, look what he did after the first altercation, which is impossible to get around for them. The first altercation by the parking garage, where he's claims he's pulled a gun, is pulled on him, a real gun, that he doesn't know is a fake gun. He continues to follow the guy who pulls the real gun and according to him, tries to kill him. So think about that for a second, when you talk about a reasonable doubt, or a doubt based on reason. Think about that. That was so odd. I mean, he said, yeah, the guy pulled out a gun on me. I thought it was a real gun, and he threatened to kill me. So after he walked away, I decided to follow him. I don't follow him, berating him as I'm following him, almost begging him to shoot me. Well, let's see Detective Flores, but anyway, Detective Flores told me what he thought about that. He testified. He said, that would be an odd thing for Relli to do. It's testimony from his trial. Mr. Efron, on December 2021, you asked him why he continued to follow Mr. Mayers if he knew he had a gun, right? Answer, yes, Detective Flores. Question, because according to you, you told him that would seem to be an odd thing to do, right? Or odd thing to do, I didn't say, right? And Detective Flores said, yes. Of course, it's an odd thing to do if you know it's a real gun. Not so much an odd thing to do if you think it's a fake gun or a prop gun. And of course, when Relli was questioned about why he would do that, about being an odd thing to do, his answer was, with Detective Flores' question about it, Relli said, I don't know. That was his answer to Detective Flores early on when he questioned him. When you asked Mr. Efron why did he continue to follow Mr. Mayers after seeing the gun, what he said was he didn't know why. So Detective Flores, and he said correct. Detective Flores questioned him about it, and the best Relli could do at that point he said, I don't know, I followed him for his real gun. Obviously, I don't know was all Relli could say because he knew he couldn't tell the truth. That was a problem. He knew that. That alone is reasonable doubt. That is a reasonable doubt. Woo. That's it. You just need one. Just one.
That's an improper statement of the law.
In fact, the lack of evidence further shows that this was a prop. And you heard that the police found absolutely no evidence of a shooting at the scene whatsoever. Officer Zizzo told you that there was no sign of a shooting, there was no blood, no bullet holes, no shell casings, no physical evidence at all. That's from the testimony at this trial point of view from Officer Zizzo. Just recap. There was no blood, no bullet holes, no shell casings, no physical evidence of a shooting was recovered at all. No, sir. So that was the guy who was there within 15 minutes. And you heard from the body cam footage from one of the other responding officers, turned out to be Sergeant John Cook, Officer Zizzo said. Sergeant Cook said, there's going to be no evidence for now. We have no victims, no hits, no evidence. That's the sergeant body cam footage. That's Officer Zizzo's testimony. Also captured on Sergeant Cook's body cam footage is him saying, as of now, or no victims as of now, unless it pops up in the hospital, it's probably just a warning shot. That's testimony in front of you all in this trial. Again, so no victims as of now, unless it pops up in the hospital, it's probably just a warning shot, right? That's what he said. Sergeant Zizzo said to us. Well, Sergeant Cook was close. It was actually 2 warning shots from the prop gun. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution cannot prove otherwise beyond a reasonable doubt. They cannot. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Not without Relli being totally believable. Not without Relli being totally believable. And he is not worth it. I don't think I need to spend much time arguing that. That's why, in addition to asking him about November 6th, 2021, which we spent some time doing, we spent so much time questioning him about his credibility. And I'm sorry he was on the witness stand for 5 days. The reason he was on the witness stand 5 days, I was only 2 total days with him. But the reason he was here that long is because he didn't answer questions. Like, questions had to be asked on cross anyway. 3, 4 times, the judge had to get involved. That's why he was here so long. Well, because without him, when he questioned his credibility, it's not because I was having fun speaking to him. I wasn't. But when you question his credibility, it's because his credibility is at issue. Because without him and his credible testimony, the prosecution has 0 evidence of a shooting. They even had to prove, they have 0 evidence to prove that it was an operable gun, let alone shooting. Consider that. What's the prosecution's evidence that the object in Rocky's hand on November 6, 2021 was not a prop gun? What's their evidence? Relli shell casings. Okay, those. Relli's knuckle scrapes. And the videos from parking garage at 1616 Vista Del Mar and 6200 Hollywood Boulevard. But remember what Detective Flores said about those videos. First, he said, there's no evidence from 1616 Vista Del Mar of an actual gun being discharged. I asked him that question, and he said, correct. From that view by itself, no. Well, that's the only view we have of 1616 Vista Del Mar, that video. They're all there, and so but then, second, I said the only time you could see a gun in any video was the parking garage video. And in that one, you can't tell if it's operable, whether it's an operable gun, a real gun or not, right, Detective Flores? And he was honest. You first cited the fact the gun was displayed, right? Which you already told this jury that the gun that was displayed, the only time you could see a gun in any video was the parking garage video, correct? You already told this jury, by that video, you can't tell if it's operable, right? Correct. So if he can't tell it's operable, how are you supposed to do? Detective Flores can't tell you it's operable. How are you supposed to tell it's operable? You have to believe Relli's story. All of it. And his credibility. Then, third, what else do they have without Relli? Sounds, those 2 sounds. Okay. The gunshot sounds heard at the 6200 Hollywood Boulevard video could have been made by some kind of replica firearm, according to Detective Flores. He said, aside from a gun, I asked him, what else could make those sounds? An operable gun, I should say. And then he said, the sound I heard off the camera, I mean a firearm, some kind of replica firearm. He also acknowledged that a replica firearm could also make that sound, a starter pistol could make that sound. That's Detective Flores. It's a case detective. Let that sink in for a moment, folks, please. The prosecution's case detective told you the sound that they're relying on to prove that Rocky had an operable firearm that night, beyond a reasonable doubt, could have been made by a non-operable prop gun. That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's all you need right there. In other words, the videos in and of themselves don't prove that what Rocky had was an operable firearm beyond a reasonable doubt. The case detective produced that. What else does the prosecution have to rely on? Relli's knuckle scrapes. But even they don't believe that's a gunshot wound. What they said in their opening statement about Relli's knuckle scrapes. Perhaps they were bullet graze, perhaps they were not. Well, perhaps they were not. That's what they want you to accept as proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Perhaps they were not. What else did they say in their opening about those scrapes? Whether the victim or not the victim in this case was actually shot or injured by this will not be something that you will have to decide at the end of this case. They told you in open statements. Really? Says who? Says who? They told you that because they themselves don't believe. Those are
That's an
knuckles.
improper argument, State.
I've already read the jury instructions to you, and one of those jury instructions lists the elements of what assault with a semi-automatic pistol is. Each of those elements have to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. What those elements are, that is the law in California, as to what an assault with a semi-automatic pistol is.
One of the objections actually to what said what the prosecution wants you to do.
Overruled. That part's overruled.
But anyway, regarding the law, this is not about an element of the law, ladies and gentlemen. It's about the credibility of the only witness in this case, the prosecution. That's what that argument was about. For credibility, I mean, you have to. So whether it was a bullet shot or not, or a scrape from the floor, it does matter. It does matter. Of course, they don't want you to consider that. Because first, whether Relli was truthful about his injury goes to his credibility. Credibility, not about the elements of the law. It goes to his credibility, whether he's truthful about the nature of the injuries. And second, whether or not Relli was actually injured by a bullet is something important to consider in deciding whether Rocky had an operable firearm or a prop gun. Those are the two reasons I just brought that up to you. Those are the two reasons. So I disagree with him. You do have to consider whether he was hit by a bullet or not, because he said he was. At first, anyway. Because obviously a prop gun can't cause that injury. So was that a gunshot wound? Of course not. Of course that wasn't a gunshot wound. Even Relli couldn't tell you those scrapes were definitely from a bullet. At least at trial, he couldn't tell you. Look at his testimony when discussing whether he was grazed by a bullet. I guess whatever is left from the bullet or the floor or whatever, I don't know. I can't see. Okay. So it's either what was left from the bullet or the floor. Well, I guess it could have been the floor. I don't know. I can't see. It's not what he said in his lawsuit. Lawsuit, he said the shot. And he wants $30 million because he was shot. Now it's maybe it was the floor. I mean, does the truth mean anything to him? Does the oath mean anything at all? He really doesn't believe what he said to you in the beginning. I can say whatever I want, do whatever I want. That's that. And that's what they want you to accept as proof beyond a reasonable doubt of you. Relli said it could have been the floor. Of course it was the floor. When he was punching Hills, of course it wasn't the floor. It's on his left hand. Relli said he was left. But regardless, there's no bullet in the world that could have done that. I mean, think about it. It scrapes the top of one knuckle, does a bit of a dive to the second knuckle, does a real deep dive to that third knuckle, and then scoots along. I mean, that would be one heck of a magic bullet to do that. Just looking at those knuckle scrapes, no one has to be an expert in anything. You know, they are not from a bullet. You want to put them up or something? Yeah. Boy. $30 million. There's no one with eyes and a brain. I think that's a bullet wound. That's what he said. Raised by me. Now he said, for the floor. For the floor. I mean, he still brought a lawsuit against Rocky, claiming he required necessary medical attention from that bullet wound. Bullet wound, like he said. Ridiculous. By the way, it's the same knuckles you saw in his boomerang Instagram video we posted on his manicured hands, which I think we showed to the jury. Yeah. Go ahead. That's a permanent injury that only $30 million would take care of. He first told the police that he treated scrapes by himself the day they occurred. That's what Officer Anderson testified to. But then days later, after traveling all the way back to New York, cross country, he first went to a hospital in New York for medical treatment. Here, he said, because he doesn't trust anything that in Los Angeles. Why did he go to the hospital in New York? Not because he required medical treatment for those scrapes, but because the detective on November 9th, 2021, told him during an interview that he needs to get treated because this is the type of case this is. This is Detective Flores' testimony. Her statement, Detective Manfred, was that he needs to go to get medical treatment because of the type of case that this is, correct? I believe that's correct. So a detective is telling him on November 9th, you need to go to a hospital, get treated because of the type of case that this is. Normally, you tell someone to go to the hospital because they need medical attention, not the manufacturer of thing in a case. That is offensive, and it should be offensive to you because the type of cases that you go to the hospital. Make it look like you require a hospital visit. You know, it's bad enough that the prosecution main, I say only witness, manufactured evidence in this case. You don't need to manufacture a hospital visit. But he did just that with shell casings also, manufactured evidence in this case. The only evidence they presented trying to establish that Rocky had an operable firearm. I'm going to take you through this. It's not going to be a stretch, and certainly it's multiple reasons of doubt in this. You heard a lot about those shell casings in this case. What you didn't hear was what the police found. You didn't hear that because that didn't happen. The body cam footage introduced at the very beginning of this case, first witness Officer Zizzo showed that the police responded to that scene at 10:32, less than 15 minutes after the incident. Officer Zizzo told you there were 7 police officers there. You saw them on the body cam video. You saw, Officer Zizzo told you, 7 officers were searching the scene for any signs of a shooting with flashlights. Those big police searchlights. For how long? Detective Flores told you, about 20 minutes they were there for searching. That's 7 minutes, 7 officers times 20 minutes. That's 140 minutes of manpower right there. 7 officers for 20 minutes of trained police officers searching with flashlights for any signs of a shooting, including shell casings. They found nothing, absolutely nothing. You heard the stipulation at the end. The stipulation needs to be agreed, the defense and the prosecution. At the end of the case, just before the judge's instructions the other day, it's Tuesday, right? It's the last day of Tuesday. The stipulation between us and the prosecution that a prop gun would also have ejected cartridges. But importantly, that stipulation makes clear that the shell casing recovered in this case did not come from a prop gun. That's for sure. And of course not. Lou explained that as well. That prop gun ejects blank cartridges. And bear this in mind, this is important. This part is important. The police came looking for evidence of a shooting. They were looking for those steel metal jackets, those shell casings. There was 0 evidence on this record. 0. I defy them to say, show anything on this record whatsoever regarding what those blank cartridges look like or how they were ejected from a prop gun. There's zero.
That's the improper argument, it misstates the evidence in the case.
Oh, it does not?
Just, I don't recall every word that has been stated by every witness during the entire trial. So I don't know if it misstates the evidence or not. If this is something that's important to you, then you can ask that the court reporter read it back. All right?
If I'm stating the evidence, they get to speak last. I asked him, show the evidence of what the casing from a prop gun looks like. Show the evidence of that to you. I don't want him to state the evidence. So there, I lay that challenge down. Show the evidence. I don't want to say, show it. There's no evidence whatsoever regarding what blank cartridges look like or how they would have ejected from a prop gun. No evidence of what they would look like, okay? There's no evidence regarding what material those blank cartridges would have been made of. You heard about paper and plastic from always, from Lululemon. Paper and plastic, or how far or in what direction they would have been ejected. There's no evidence of that at all from the prop gun. Or whether they would have still been intact or not from a prop gun. You heard no evidence of that. In other words, there's been no evidence whether the blank cartridge from Rocky's prop gun would have been observable to the police as the shiny metallic shell casing from a real firearm. No evidence of that. And they had plenty of opportunity. They had a ballistics expert in here. He could have told you, oh no, blank cartridge shell casing look exactly like 9mm shell casings. They're steel. They could have done that. They didn't ask one question about that. They didn't ask Detective Flores one question about that. They asked our witness, Lou Levin, about it, who's not an expert, but he knows enough. He gave an honest answer. He said, yes, they do eject. Talk about paper, bullets in the front, describe what the casings look like at all, or how if they would have split or not split, or were they shiny metal things that like those 9mm shell casings. In any event, the police found nothing, no evidence of a shooting whatsoever, no bullet holes, no blood, no damage to any one of those cars, which would have almost been impossible. No damage to any one of those cars we're parking on right there. And of course, no shell casings. This bears emphasis. The police found no shell casings whatsoever in 140 minutes worth of combined searching with searchlights. But Relli wants you to believe he found it by himself with a cell phone flashlight in 2 to 3 minutes. An hour and a half later. Flies in the face of common sense, defies reason. And what does the prosecution do to try and get around that devastating fact in their case? They suggest that the police didn't know where to look. They actually asked, officers, was it possible you missed the shell casings? As you sit here, can you say to a certain, yes, that's them questioning their witness. Can you say to a certainty that there was not a fired cartridge case in that street on East Elm? Answer, I can't say. I may have missed something. It's possible. Again, it's possible. We've already discussed jury selection, what you promised about never getting that word here. They broke that promise on the very first witness. Possible is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but neither is their exercise trying to excuse the officers possibly looking in the wrong place. Possibly looking in the wrong place. They actually told you in their opening statement that the officers didn't know exactly where to look. They said that to you in their opening statement. They didn't know exactly where to look. But the one problem with that excuse is there's a video. There's a video and body cam footage that show the police in the location exactly where to look. Exactly where to look. Here's the side-by-side images. There's the, right, jump up here on. Hotel. Everyone see my blocking? Okay, so here's the officer searching. Right there. There's that orange wall I keep saying. This is where it will happen, right here, right here. And they're searching right there with these flashlights. Now there's this person who Relli first swore was him. He swore was him at 11:09, and then said it wasn't him, but it was him first. But some news coming back here at 11:09, right across that orange wall where they're searching. Anyway, you also know this is where the tussling happened and the Proctor was shot. Do we have a shot of from the video where that was? Or you have to do that?
Yes.
We'll do that later. But anyway, you remember the wall here, and we'll show it's near the corner of Vista Del Mar and Selma. And this is where at one point you saw 12 run into. What happened right here? They're looking in the exact right spot. But we didn't know where to look. They just said that, you know, they had these videos. They're videos. So regardless of how far blank cartridges may eject or what they may look like after being fired from a crop gun, one thing is certain, the police searched that exact same location that Relli said he was at on that video when he returned to the scene, or now he didn't return to the scene because now there's no evidence that he returned to the scene at all. Thanks. Well, I was in trouble, it's just a sign of break, so. Documents. Right there. Anyway, it's the same exact location. I don't know why they said the community mistake. They didn't know what location was. They were there. They got lucky because they hit the exact spot where Relli, Rocking Hills could be seen at the moment of the shot. Police didn't find Relli's shell casings. Impossible for them to miss that. 7 officers, 20 minutes, searchlights. Impossible. Those were not there 15 minutes after this event. They were not there. So what does the prosecution do? And Relli then, what does he do? They change their story and say now, maybe that wasn't actually Relli on video after all. They did it right here in front of you. That was all right in front of you in 2025. Because part of his testimony, and I wasn't even involved yet, that was all Mr. Brzlovic, he said, yes, that's me, 1109 guy. That's me. Yes. And Mr. Brzlovic, you sure? I'm sure. Well, you know, weren't you wearing a black hoodie before and that looks like a white hoodie? Yeah, I probably went and changed. So Brzlovic had to impeach his own witness. And you'll see what happens. Once again, they say possibly. There was possibly additional. So the solution to that now being him now, because he swore he came back. So I asked Detective Flores, was this guys? Oh, this is Relli's testimony. Okay. Right, that's where he said, yeah, that's me. Okay, but I just said all that to you, but there is in the transcript, just in case I thought I get that up at a whole cloth. I said, yeah, I'm sure. So, they said, just to you just now, shocked a little bit by this one, I was shocked by this one, that I made a mistake to you in my opening by saying that was Relli. I made a mistake to you. Relli swore on the oath it was him to you. But I made a mistake in my opening. He swore to you under oath it was him until he changed. Until they impeached their witness and got him to change his testimony. That, oh no, it wasn't me. In fact, that same person in that video was there between 11:09 and 11:11, which is about 2 minutes, the same length of time Relli said he had returned to the scene for. You also heard Detective Flores talk about that. And he told you that the time of 11:11, when the person in the video enters, is consistent when Relli told the police he returned to the scene. Of course, there were multiple problems with that story. First, he said that his girlfriend, Lydia Parker, was with him at the time he supposedly searched the area. and recover those shell casings. You know the video doesn't show you that. I'm happy with it. What other problem does the prosecution have a further story about picking up shell casings? The photos, which Relli claims he took at the scene, were timestamped on his phone. And they showed the photos were actually taken at 11:40, between 11:45 and 11:48 p.m. That's more than a half hour after he said he was there. Half hour after he said he was there. So, make no mistake about it, the prosecution realized they had a problem with their evidence here, a big problem. So despite that fact, they took the position for years that that guy who came back at 11:09 with Relli, returned to the scene in that video. And despite the fact that Relli told you at this trial that he was sure it was him, the prosecution then impeached their own witness to get him to say, no, that wasn't me. And because Relli, let me see, hold on a second, I know you want to break. Maybe about 5 more minutes, so one stop now.
No.
Okay,
2:45 is when we break.
yeah, let's do it now.
All right, folks, we'll take a break.